into politics in order to become a politician the rest of my life. It can certainly be a worthy endeavor, but that was not my goal. I like to think that I had stepped up for my state, I'd stepped up for my country, and I was perfectly willing to step back. But I stayed involved. Law and order got a little more notice than some of the other things that I did, but I served on the China Commission. Condoleezza Rice asked me to head up an advisory board of distinguished Americans, including former cabinet members and former heads of CIA, former senators, that sort of thing, to study and report to her and give her advice on matters of national security. One day, the President called me and asked me to help a judge by the name of John Roberts get confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. And it reminded me again of the importance of that role, probably the second most important thing a President of the United States does in terms of serving this country. So we were able to see that through. And Judge Roberts proved that in the days ahead, if you send up a solid conservative constitutionalist of quality, he will win out in the end. And if things get even worse on Capitol Hill and the conservative does not win out, you send another conservative right behind him and go through the same fight again. You'll win that fight with the American people. And that's a lesson that we should learn from our history with regard to those judges. But anyway, that was the proudest moment I guess I had in my non-Senate career in Washington, D.C. But you know, you can travel the world and you can do a lot of different things, but oftentimes the most important things in your life happen under your own roof. And on my way out of the Senate, Jerry and I got married, and we discovered too long after that we were going to be parents. I've been blessed at every stage of my life and having people who maybe saw a little more in me than I saw in myself as a young man, all the way up to the time that after the initial surprise wore off, I knew that I was blessed beyond measure in a way that I'd never known before. And Hayden is here, and now she has a little brother, Sammy, who's almost 11 months old, and he's upstairs, and we've been spending a wonderful day here. But as the presidential season rolled around, and I served on these various boards and endeavors, looked at the future, looked at my country, looked at the things that I knew were important, things coming down the road. Maybe the average person who had to work for a living didn't have time to delve into. And then I'd come home and we'd talk about the kind of world that these kids were going to grow up in, and my grandchildren. And you have to ask yourself a question: how many people have an opportunity to really do something about that? And what is a man's highest and best use? Can his country use him? Is he doing the right thing? So I stand here before you not as somebody who has hungered for the office of the presidency for many years, or as somebody who claims that he's got all the answers to all the questions. I simply come to you as somebody that has been very blessed, who loves his country, who's concerned about the direction that she's going in the future, and who knows that in the near future, the President will be deciding things that's going to affect us for many years to come, and decide the answer to these questions. What kind of world are these kids going to grow in? That's the basis of my being here tonight and talking to you. The number one thing on my mind tonight, and the number one thing that I think is important to our country, is to make sure that we protect our people. We are now in a global war. We're in a global war with a relentless enemy who thinks that this war has been going on for a few hundred years, and they're plenty willing for it to go on another 100 or so if necessary, killing millions of people in the interim. We've never faced anything like this before. They are intent on bringing Western civilization, especially the United States, to her knees, and do whatever is necessary to do that. The current front is Iraq and Afghanistan, but it's a much bigger issue than that, and will be so long after Iraq and Afghanistan are hopefully in our rearview mirror. And the underlying question is, as the whole nation watches, as America is being tested, is are we going to appear to be weak and divided as we face future tests all along the way? Because the answer to that is going to determine whether we're in a more dangerous situation, whether our safety is going to be even more in jeopardy or not. Weakness invites attack. And we have to demonstrate to the rest of the world, both friend and foe alike, that we're absolutely committed and united as a people to do whatever is necessary to prevail in the conflict that we're in the global war that we face. The two issues that should concern anyone who would aspire to be president are security of our people and the prosperity of our people, the continuing prosperity of our people. We see that apparently the Democrats in the Michigan State Legislature follow the example of the Democrats in Congress, and that is they spend whatever they want to and then fight to raise taxes to meet the spending instead of the other way around. They talk about lost revenue. Whenever you talk about tax cut, how much revenue is going to be lost. Tax cuts doesn't result in lost revenue. It's not lost. If it's in the pocket of the taxpayer, taxpayers know exactly where it is. It's not lost in it. They forget that that money is saved, that money is invested, that money creates jobs, and all of that is taxed again by the government. Shouldn't confuse the wealth of the government with the wealth of nations. Adam Smith told us the difference a long, long time ago. Democrats haven't learned that lesson yet. But yet, the majority party would continue down a road of economic disaster. Now that may sound like an extreme statement, but it's not. We're doing quite well now. We're enjoying about 22 quarters of successive growth in this country. We're even talking about balancing the budget maybe in the not too distant future. But anybody who takes a look at it in Congress, any economist in the country will tell you that we're on an unsustainable path. That's the word that they use. Our Government Accountability Office, the Treasury Department, anyone else. Because we are blessed by living longer. We're going to have a greater retirement age group and a proportionately smaller working group paying into service that retirement. It simply won't work. And yet Washington keeps kicking the can down the road, waiting for somebody else to come along and solve it. I often wondered what the children would say if they had a seat at the table and saw us spending their money and saw us bankrupting future generations. I wonder what the unborn would say if they had a seat at the table and saw what was going on. More importantly, I'm wondering what they would think about us. We are better than that. We've got to send the message to the politicians in Washington that we are better than that, and you can send that message on Election Day next November and elect a president who's not afraid to blow the whistle on this irresponsible conduct. We ought to face up to the issues of the present